took Genpact public in New York Stock Exchange. The investor had bought us at $600 million. And a reporter asked me, so now what will you do? The best I came up with, I said, I'll buy a new music system.
What is it that Indians bring to the table in Silicon Valley?
They make mainly correct decisions about people, which is a fatal flaw of many of us. The IITs, the MBA schools. They teach leadership, but they don't actually teach you how to lead. Leadership is defined by how many leaders you create. And always the answer is 50%. So you all run organizations with 50% failure rates. I'm sticking my neck out here, which will be chopped off by... This is a new thing happening in the world. And we're probably the only country left in the world that they can come.
And why do you say that?
Because there's a... Risk-taking is a missing aspect. We reach our comfort zone very quickly.
You made a hero overnight.
I talked to a very famous banker in India and said, why don't you go overseas? He said, I'm fine in India. They're trying to conquer Punjab versus conquering the Far East. Biggest elephant in the room in India that nobody is addressing is
you mentioned, the success of Silicon Valley, especially with Indian entrepreneurs, making a massive recognition and dent there.
right.
So what has happened there? I mean, you spend a lot of time there, and you've seen that closely, and you continue to spend a lot of time there. So what is it that Indians bring to the table in Silicon Valley?
I think it's also a broader point that you're making, which is interesting, as to having worked in the US for many years and done all of those things, that I've seen of many CEOs, many of the great CEOs that we've met. And the one thing that I've seen about them is temperament. Phenomenally balanced, even temperament, ability to ride the storms without getting ruffled. A level of security and confidence that is quite fantastic within themselves. Built, perhaps in the Indian cases, through family structures that are supporting them and the warmth and the embrace of those structures. Certainly true for me. Grew up from a large family, very used to being encompassed. Not that I have an even temperament by any chance. I should say that before anybody listening to the talk says, what is he talking about? But if I think about some great leaders that I know in this world, even Deepak Parekh in India, fantastic temperament at any time. I've known him for years. His ability to handle the ups and downs and have a common sense and a sense of confidence of what he says is fantastic. But going well beyond that, if I look at some of the best leaders in the world and CEOs that I've known, Rajat Gupta, ex-McKinsey, who did get into trouble, but you've got to see this man. I know him extremely well. He's a great friend. I've never seen him ruffled, ever.
Never, ever. Despite
all the things that
all the challenges.
But certainly before those challenges. And it comes from a sense of peace and calm and ability to assimilate. And
before this crisis, obviously he was in challenges every day as part of his job.
And tough, difficult situations being handled with an ease and calmness and a temperament which was fantastic. Dr. Naresh Trehan here, actually, by the way. Someone I love dearly, great friend. I don't know of a more stressful job in the world than his. Right?
I absolutely agree with that.
Right. And unless doctors in the US, he's on call 24/7. I think if I call him in the middle of the night, he'll pick up and say it. And in a very calm, even voice, he'll say, "Haan, kya baat hai? Kya hal chal hai?" So I actually had him speak to our Genpact employees because I said, you guys think you're stressed out by sales targets, quarterly targets? Meet someone. You talking about real stress, people's lives in his hands. And if you go across the board, if you go to people like Jim McNerney of Boeing, who I knew, Dave Calhoun, who's an old friend who ran Boeing, just got fired, unfortunately, because of all the issues there. People of enormous temperament and balance, without getting swayed one way or the other or getting panicked. Their ability to deal with crises, their ability to deal with issues. And on top of that, I would say EQ matters a lot. Jack Welch was very fiery, certainly no even temperament, but fantastic EQ. He knew how well you were doing within 3 minutes of talking to you.
How?
I think we all send signals.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you believe in that?
Yeah, I think body signals, physical signals, mental signals, absolutely. I watch them all the time. I think I'm pretty damn good at studying signals of other people, how they're feeling. I may choose to ignore them. That's a different issue.
You live in a society, right?
I may say, I don't want to deal with it. But signals matter. Are they confident? Are they doing well? Are they happy? Are they going to achieve stuff? Are they struggling with their work? Are they going to be a good leader? Are people going to look up? You can read a lot fast. And so I think people like that do have great EQ. As a result, they make decisions. They make mainly correct decisions about people, which is a fatal flaw of many, many of us, generally.
And this can't be taught. This is something natural, is it? Or you evolve with experiences on it?
You asked a very critical question. It should be taught, but isn't.
But isn't?
Isn't.
You don't feel it's important? I mean, the education system and the family system?
I don't think anybody kind of formally teaches you this. I don't know what you think. I don't know if you are aware of where anybody teaches you.
No, I'm not. There are some efforts here and there where people are talking about emotional, social, mental, well-being.
Yes.
As should become part of a curriculum, should become part of the pedagogy.
Yes.
Not only as a subject, but even a teacher who's teaching, let's say, chemistry, or biology, or maths, or economics, should also be a psychologist first.
Yes.
Har shikshak manovagyanik. If they come from that aspect, they are far more, connected with their students and are able to connect, not emotionally but mentally.
Absolutely.
And the students receive it so well.
So well.
And that I see in the race to, compete and cover syllabus and exams in India. We've left it all behind.
Yes.
And there are talks and there are, some pockets of excellence which are trying to do that, but we are very, very far.
But even if you think about the IITs, the MBA schools, they don't teach this. They teach leadership, but they don't actually teach you how to lead a group of people. They teach you HR, but they're not teaching you how to inspire a group of people. What could you do?
What could you do?
Right.
How to care for people.
Correct. How to do the right things. How do you make those judgment calls? That's where, Welch was a very tough master for us, demanding. But nobody would ever leave GE. We had...
Despite his personality or way of work.
Because it's fantastic to work with. He was tough. He was rough. And fantastic. And I think that's one if I go back to my time of what we did well, and it was a direct learning from GE, certainly, it was we built a great team, fundamentally. And that solved all the issues. We built a phenomenal team of experts, of communicators, of salespeople, of technology people. But they were phenomenal leaders. In leadership, you spend 30-40% of your time on people.
Yeah.
I'm an accountant. Last time I looked at double entry bookkeeping was about 25 years ago. So,
So technical skills really take a backstage.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Darwin statement, right? It's not the strongest that survive, nor the most intelligent, but those who are most adaptable to change. So it's not about technical skills or strength in this or that. It's about, are you adaptable? Can you change if the markets around you are changing, if the people around you, their needs are changing? And yet, so I do a little exercise when I talk to groups of leaders sometimes. I'm asked to talk. And I always ask them, I said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is getting the right people into the organization? And everybody says 10, 11, 12. And I asked them, what is the failure rate of hiring? And the answer is 50%. What is the failure rate of your succession, of the people reporting to you? How many times do you have the right person in the right slot? Doing exactly all that you should do. And yet you claim it's the most important thing to do. So tell me, how many times? And always the answer is 50%. And I'm saying, so you all run organizations with 50% failure rates, right? In one of the most critical aspects.
Statistically, yes.
But that's, in essence, the heart and soul of YG in those days, in its heyday. It was so good because its top layer were all people. McNerney became head of Boeing and 3M. Bob Nardelli became head of Home Depot. Somebody else became head of something else. These were the best leaders in the world. McKinsey does that also.
It built a lot of, world-class leaders.
Absolutely.
That culture, that mentoring.
Yes.
By Jack Welch.
Yes.
And so G has been a massive part of your life. So if we could just go a little, behind the scene, because G was a platform where you played a very, very strong and a successful inning. So if you just go back, what enabled that inning? If I could just, go a few layers down in your childhood. You said you were in a, joint family. There were a lot of support systems. So what memories do you recall when you go back to your, school days and your family days? What are those pivotal moments that, you carried with you in terms of lessons?
This is all going to come out completely wrong. I can promise you right now. So we weren't a joint family, but I have 55 first cousins.
55
first cousins.
Okay.
Khanna, Kapoor, Khandan, and the Bhasin somewhere in the middle. And we all know each other well because we'd all spend time going up to the hills together, on vacations together. Some from Jalandhar, some from Amritsar, some from Delhi, some from Calcutta, some from Bhopal, Sindri. I was born in Sindri. So we all came together very easily and very well. And that teaches you a lot about how to get along with people, adaptability, etc. To be honest, I was frighteningly unambitious. I had no real ambition. Ambition was to get through school, college, whatever the hell you had to do.
Right.
And chartered accountancy, which is when I went off to London to do my accounting at that time. Not very successfully. Finally passed all the exams, but not without a few mishaps on the way. But life is a series of accidents, honestly, for most people. I think we choose to believe we have crafted our careers, but you meet someone somewhere on a flight and you strike up a partnership. You meet someone somewhere else and you go off and do something. I was working for a company called RCA. I wanted to travel the world. I had joined them at a low scale. My boss the boss 2 layers up was a great American guy, David Wise. He was fantastic. I was more experienced than the others, but I had come back from Bahrain. So a couple of things. One, certainly I'd gone off to Bahrain after my chartered accountancy, and I had a great boss there, a Palestinian guy, ran a company called Saba and Company, part of Tushros. Wonderful people, but I couldn't live there. I realized that my quest for money wasn't great enough to allow me to live in a situation where my passport was kept by the boss's office. You needed an exit visa to get out. I mean, these things made me
uncomfortable.
You still do. It just said, I can't do this. I can't live here. And so I went back, joined RCA, ran their internal audit department. My boss, I joined at a relatively junior level, but within 9 months, he was fantastic. 1 or 2 people left. He said, you're taking over. I'm moving to Brazil. You're taking over the whole department. And I said, it was the first time somebody had told me that, you're really damn good and you should do something more. And I said, holy shit.
This was the first time somebody really...
that I had tried, and somebody else had said, wow, this is terrific, and here's a big job for you.
Is it important to get appreciated? It's been a while. I mean, look at a childhood, schooling, college, professional qualification, a job in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's where somebody, really recognizes your performance, and the journey certainly changes that, yes, I'm here to make a mark.
Yeah. I think we praise too easily, particularly nowadays.
Now.
Yeah. Where people need to be stroked all the time. It is one of the things that I've seen when I ran Genpact across the world, that the way you dealt with the Chinese and the Indians and the Americans and the British and all that was quite different.
Okay.
Certainly the level of stroking you need to do in India and constant affirmation is quite high. I wasn't known for it. I never want to be known for it. I think you must praise, but you must praise well. And at times that is important and makes an impact. Otherwise it loses its impact. If you're constantly saying, oh, what a great boy you are, what a great guy you are, if you're constantly having to do that, I don't know where the resilience comes from. Where do you build the person who can take the fact that they haven't done a great job?
Yeah.
Our reviews in Genpact are quite legendary if you talk to people.
Really?
Yes.
Very, very transparent and up there.
Very upfront. Yeah. You did well, great. You didn't do well,
let's talk.
In front of 40 people. Also, again, that also to me was important because it's transparent. It's not personal. So I think praise, to your point, is important.
But at the right time, in the right quantity.
Pick it carefully, do it well, so that it's memorable and not one of many series of compliments that you're receiving, which get lost in the mud. Because in your heart, you haven't done that much. Oh, what a great job. Awesome. Admirable. Fantastic. I think it diverts from the sense of excellence.
True.
Or the pursuit of excellence, of saying, this is fantastic. So my thought has always been different on that from most people, I suspect. Having said that, if it's done the right way, it drives ambition, to your point.
For sure.
And it suddenly tells you that, maybe you can do a lot more. And so that's why, if I go back, that's how my journey really started.
So when did the G happen? After RCA?
What happened was I joined RCA. They promoted me. I became the head of international audit in the UK. I was working in Sunbury on Thames. I used to live in the UK for 12 years. And the RCA boss changed, and he said, look, why don't you come and work in the US? And I said, okay. We were interested to work there. Never been there, hadn't been there. I said, fine. I moved across. And then sort of 6 months later, while I was waiting for my green card, I was watching the news on TV, and it said that Jack Welch had bought RCA. GE had bought RCA. Jack was known as Neutron Jack, which means because he would leave the building standing and all the people would be killed off. Like neutron bomb.
Okay.
So I was watching TV and called up my boss on the phone. I said, listen, I've just seen this news. He hadn't seen it. I said, GE is going to buy it. I don't know. What's this about? He knows. And he said, oh, shit. That's a bad thing.
That's a bad thing.
It was one of the biggest takeovers of its time. I didn't have a green card. I just had a job. I said, oh, no. And that's how it started, because GE was well known. It was radically different from anything I had seen before. Yeah. It was entrepreneurial, informal, fast-moving, terrific people, teamwork everywhere, fantastic culture, unbelievable culture in terms of how people would work together. I could call anyone in GE at any point in time and ask for help, and I would get it.
Irrespective of where
Division,
are you calling from,
whatever.
What level, what grade,
Nothing.
What department, what company.
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. It was, if I wanted to call up GE Japan to understand how they were doing financing of kiosk loans because I wanted to replicate that in some other part of the world, on phone call. You were brought together often. Excellence was admired. It's a tough company. Tough results oriented. We were growing very fast. On the 2nd of January, 3rd of January, we would have the annual meeting, Boca Raton meeting of GE. When you'd kick off the new year, you got one day to celebrate. They would ruin my New Year's Eve every time because I'd be flying across from India on New Year's Eve to reach the meeting on time. You kicked it off. The next year was on. But there was a spirit of enterprise, which was quite fantastic, of very little politics.
No scope for politics.
No scope for politics. No maneuvering going on. There must have been, perhaps.
Yeah, but pin it in the bud right there then. Don't let it prosper.
Don't let it prosper. Kill it. It gets in people's way. Petty shit.
Yeah.
Crap. Gets in people's way. You really couldn't say, this is my turf. Or that is, so stay out of it. Or what are you doing in my turf? It was if it's good for the company, let them invade your turf.
So did they then pull you out of RCA? When did that happen?
Well, they merged. They bought RCA, merged it. By the way, no one is left from RCA except me.
Oh.
I think when I was made a GE officer, Welch sent me a note saying NBC and you were the best things we got from RCA. Wow, that's worth something. People left because RCA was a mediocre company. We owned Hertz Rent-A-Car, CIT Financial, we made appliances, we made TVs. But it was siloed, it was political, it had bad leadership, you never saw the leaders, etc., etc., etc. And Welch came in like a storm and they
cleaned it up,
took it apart. A lot of the people basically said, all right, we're not going to make it here, this is not our culture, and left. Okay. And I realized that this culture was phenomenal, and I woke up.
Like how? Like everybody was leaving and then you wanted to stay.
Yeah, I wanted to stay.
The RCA culture didn't rub off on you?
I was in London doing my own thing. Therefore, at the time I got to RCA, it didn't rub off, I think, sufficiently. Right. Plus, they gave me, again, what they did was very interesting. We had a mediocre internal audit department. I was probably better than most with my background, etc. there was a huge difference in GE and RCA. GE, the internal audit department, was the Marine Corps of the company. Okay. A lot of our CEOs came from that. It was the internal management consulting.
Okay.
For RCA, it was the internal back office accounting stuff.
Right.
Again, great boss. Like me, they made me the head of the internal audit department, much to the chagrin of all my other colleagues who were much more senior to me, who all left quickly, despite my saying, please stay, etc. They all quit.
Yeah.
And, and suddenly I realized this is a great company to work with. You're focused on the right thing. You're focused on how business does well. You're focused on culture. And most of all, which I think is the most telling thing, is you're working with great people.
Yeah.
So I was working with a lot of terrific people. Jim McNerney joined later on. Dave Calhoun, who I mentioned, who was the head of Boeing, who I knew very well. He was my counterpart in the audit staff.
Okay.
Lots of people like that. Outstanding people. Larry Bossidy, Gary Wendt, who was my biggest mentor, head of GE Capital. Maverick, eccentric, take back all my words on temperament.
But you need that, right? Sometimes
you need to see that brilliance.
Yeah.
You need to see the brilliance of a man who can grow a financial services company 15% a year for 10, 15 years and make it the biggest in the world, right? It's a bit like Microsoft nowadays growing at bloody 20%, and you look at them and say, how do you do this?
How do you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. You need that. And the brilliance of the man. We would go to Japan, acquire 2 companies there. He came to India. When I first came to India, he asked Deepak Parekh right up front. He said, can we buy HDFC? First meeting, sitting at the table, breakfast.
Really?
Yep. No, the second meeting. We had a meeting with him first, and then said, why don't we have breakfast with Deepak? I said, yeah, Deepak. I said, we'd like to buy HDFC. What do you think? Deepak said, well, you talk to my shareholders. I'm not talking to you about this. But, the gumption, the risk-taking. Risk-taking is and I'm bouncing around all over the place, as you can tell. But risk-taking is a missing aspect in India.
Even now?
Substantial.
Substantially. Yeah. If you compare to the Western world businesses.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, people like it safe here, or there is not enough safety net if you go wrong?
To your point, when you said even now, I think it is changing now, but I don't think we take enough personal, financial, business risk. Same culture, which cocoons you, doesn't allow you to go past that. You're comfortable. We reach our comfort zone very quickly. Here you are elevated on platforms and achievements very quickly.
You made a hero overnight. People are looking for a messiah.
Yeah. You made a hero. People start talking about you. But at the end of the day, I built Genpact. It's a medium-scale company. It's a small to medium-scale company by global standards.
But for India, it was massive.
Yeah, it's massive. It's like,
100,000 people.
150,000 people, revenues of 30,000 crores, etc. Is it? Yeah. Market cap 80,000. It's a medium. So I think when you're elevated on platforms way too early, your sense of comfort is high, and therefore the risks you take are limited. Which is why we don't really have any global giants. Perhaps Mukesh Ambani is the only one, or maybe Adani is now. I don't know them at all, but perhaps he's the one who takes maximum risk. I don't know that most others.
So you're saying taking risk is a necessary ingredient to make a global giant for anyone?
It's fundamental.
Fundamentally.
Even to your own personal careers, people tend to move, I find, within boundaries versus taking leaps of faith and saying, I'm going to do something very different. I'm going to take the tough job. I'm going to take the one that will involve more risk, that is harder to do. So you don't really get people making major strategic moves in one way or the other. I mean, there's a few people who are phenomenal in India at it. Sunil Mittal, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Risk taker, par, no one in the world. Like the best in the world. Started with 50,000 rupees.
Absolutely.
Building stuff in England, all over the world, happily investing, and takes risks. And you can see it when you meet him. He's saying, I'm going to try. Many others who are saying, protection, defense. I'll expand where I can, even though I'm sitting on a really phenomenal asset. So I think that's a very essential part. Taking risks, multinationals do it a lot. I talked to a very famous banker in India and said, why don't you go overseas? He said, I'm fine in India. Acha chal raha. In which case, why is Citibank here? Why is HSBC here? Why is any foreign company?
Acha chal raha tha US
Acha chal raha. New Jersey, they do more business in New Jersey than they do in India.
Yeah.
As I was reminded by my GE colleagues all the time. Very humbling organization. Whenever I would get there, and they would say, Pramod, you make a lot of noise, don't you Indians? I said, why? He said, yeah, well, your sales are the same I had in New Jersey last week. So keeps you even keel and drives you. So the difference also is that you're elevated here very quickly and you think you made it.
Yeah.
Whereas there, you wake up every day, you open the newspaper and someone's eating your lunch.
Yeah. And then levels you like nobody else.
It teaches you humility, teaches you not to get ahead of yourself, and teaches you to remain constantly competitive. There's someone or the other always coming up with a new product, new idea, new business, someone or the other challenging you at any level. If you don't have that pushing you all the time, I think we don't take enough risks.
I think that's a very important point you mentioned, and I can somehow relate to what you're saying. And as we meet a lot of entrepreneurs, and there comes a point where they're like satisfied, they're fulfilled. It's like ho gaya, why whack our head, enter a different state. I mean, leave aside entering a different country, and that's where. Somehow, maybe that's in the Indian culture. Do you think so? I mean, getting fulfillment and balance, which we spoke initially about. Is it part of the culture? Are we not aggressive enough? Is it something that's not taught in the business schools and the high schools?
Very much, very much. I used to use an expression which said, never lose your edge of impatience. Impatience is a virtue, not patience. I think there's certainly no question in my mind that the state of India is also driven by that attribute, where we're not pushy enough. We don't push hard enough for a change across our environment, our politics, many other things. And, our family does tell us, sambhal ke raho, but beta, apni jagah pe raho. Respect the elders, give obeisance to them, tell them how wonderful they've done. I mean, I like the Americans a lot on that regard, and you'll hear a lot about America from me because I learned so much there. I mean, they respect the elders and then say, I'm going to now beat the shit out of you, right? If you're in a tennis match or somebody.
Yeah.
Right? The new guy will come up and say, I love you, you're marvelous, you've been a mentor, you've been a great guy. I'm now going to take you apart on the tennis court. Come. It's just, and a new guy will come up in business and say, same thing. By the way, they're deeply respectful. The families there that I meet. They'll just say, look, I've got a better idea and I'm happy to take you on and I have no fear of failure. We have a huge fear of failure. Anecdotally, very funny story. When I was spinning off Genpact, from GE Capital in India. I went to my mother and told her I'm spinning off company. I'm leaving GE Capital to spin off to this company called Genpact. She had no idea what this meant, but very savvy lady, very, very bright lady. But she knew me as GE Capital, mera beta, GE Capital. She said, why are you leaving? I said, it's a great opportunity. She looks at me and she says, no, it can't be. Why would you leave such a great job? So much publicity, media, interviews. Why would you leave, sir? I said, Majid, it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing. It's new enterprise, new industry starting. Isn't it very risky? I said, yes, it's very risky, but I think it's worth doing and I want to do it. She went to talk to my sister and says, he wants to leave GE Capital. There's something wrong. Why would he ever leave? Why would he leave for Genpact, even though he's building a new industry? मुझे समझ नहीं आया ये क्यों छोड़ता है ऐसे कोई छोड़ता है ऐसी नौकरी कमाल है कोई नहीं करता ऐसा. No, my sister said, no, he's right. She then comes back to me and says, आप क्यों छोड़ रहे हो? I said, this is a great entrepreneurial opportunity, risk-taking. She said, listen, beta, you're fine. You can tell me. Did GE fire you? Is that why you're leaving?
Tell me the truth.
Tell me the truth. And that's the level of risk-taking people want to do.
Oh.
Right. It's an anecdotal story, but I see it all the time. I see it in executives. I see it in entrepreneurs. They're trying to conquer Punjab versus conquering the Far East. How many of our people go to the Far East? How many sell in the US? How many sell in EU? Whereas if you go, and I've just come back from Norway and Scandinavia and all that, whereas those countries only sell anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, because they don't have a market there. They sell to the world.
They sell to the world. So they build Nokias and they build the Ikeas and they build the Ericssons.
And the auras of the world.
Right.
It's coming from Finland.
Right. They build the Skypes. Yeah. It's just driven by many of them don't speak English that fluently, but think about how they grew.
They just don't have fear of failure.
50% of unicorns in Europe come from Sweden.
Wow.
Right. How many of us go to Sweden to
learn or emulate?
And it's so quiet. There's no one around.
How do you keep yourself motivated, engaged, buzzing with ideas? It's amazing how they have built that ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think these are things we must think about when you talk about social motion. Social, economic, other factors, apart from the technical skills we get in an MBA or a technology or something. I went to Norway. I've just come back from Norway 2 days ago. As a child, when you grow up there, it's a tough place.
It's a tough place, yeah. You're on your own.
Very cold, very dark. You do a lot of work at home yourself. You're extremely fit. These guys are fit from the time they are 2 years old.
Yeah. They're shoving ice, they're clearing roads, they're lugging woods.
Correct. Absolutely. They're doing all of that at a very young age. In Copenhagen, children cycle to school at the age of 5 without parents. You cycle, go. And kids are taught. They start working. You work in a kitchen, you work in a factory, you work in a restaurant, you do something. You don't sit at home.
Yeah.
And then you have the cold, and then you have the snow, and then you're trudging through the snow. You are tough as nails by the time you get up. And I think we ignore the lessons of that a lot. America also, the Western countries, our children are brought up very differently. We tend to feel that children are brought up without care and all of that. I think that's complete rubbish. I've seen all my friends' children in America are deeply respectful, wonderful achievers, absolutely phenomenal in terms of what they do. Of course, many of them are here as well.
Yeah.
But they just aren't at the level of maturity or the level of hard work that these kids have to be used to. There's no help at home.
Yeah.
Right. So you learn all of that, and it's quite phenomenal. As watching this program on this Olympian lady. I don't know which she was acting on. And she was talking about what she does. And she said, listen, by the time I was 12 years old, I was brought up on a farm. I could drive a combine harvester. I could do a pickup truck. I could drive a bulldozer. I could clear the farm. I could do all of that by the time I was 12 years old.
Wow.
So I think there's a mentality also around it that I must say I admired when I came back from these countries where you grow up, your concept of hard work is very different.
Can this be brought in India, or will always remain a, overarching umbrella parent doing excessive care and be always in a fear that something will go wrong?
Yeah.
It's very hard to change, is it?
Very hard to change. Very hard to change.
But despite that, you built such a large organization of, how did you train them the G way? They were coming from, this culture.
Yes.
And 150,000 of them. And scaling is the biggest,
challenge.
Monster out there in front of all entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I mean, they'll do, $1 million, $2 million. They're lucky, they'll cross $5-10 million. And that's it.
Yes.
They get stuck.
Yes.
They don't want to lose control. They don't want to trust people. But here you've not only trusted, empowered and grew. Like how did this scaling DNA come into you?
Yeah.
What was the secret?
Such a long answer I would have to give. Give you a few examples, if I may, I think, because it is the heart of the issue.
It is.
Core issue is that, what you just said. I'll give you an example. Again, we're in Norway, this place out in the boonies called Union Oy Hotel in the fjord somewhere. At night, all the bar is open, the restaurant is open, everything is open, everybody is asleep. There's complete trust that nobody's going to go grab that nice bottle of Yamazaki's 18 lying open on a shelf and drink it all. Nobody's going to do something. So the default answer in most Western countries that I'm familiar with is you trust everyone. Our default answer is you trust no one.
You prove that you're trustworthy.
And also even then you trust no one, right? Which is why we have 3 people checking your boarding pass is checked 4 times.
I know, I never understand.
It's because you trust no one.
Yeah.
You do not trust the system.
Yeah.
Right? It's because you are so ready for failure at some time.
Yeah. Right. You're waiting for a failure to happen and then you can pin down someone.
So I think that is it. So the amount of productivity, efficiency, effectiveness that you lose as a result is enormous.
True.
So, and which is why we are not very productive as a country. Individual employees and labor is not very productive. We use twice the staff for anything. Our airlines have 3 times more staff, 5 times more staff than anybody else.
Yes.
If you get off a flight but China is phenomenal at this. Huh? China's productivity is out of this world. So as you start thinking about scaling, you have to start thinking about creating trust amongst all of you.
Right.
Your team needs to know that they can trust you completely. You will always be fair, you will always be transparent, you will always be open, you will never hide anything, you will never give them glib talk, you will not say you can't be promoted because time theek nahi hai. You will say you can't be promoted because I'm sorry, you can't be promoted because you weren't as good as you could have been.
Yeah.
Right. So I think once you've built trust is the only way you can expand and delegate. And how do you build trust? You work together, you sit together, you fight. You scramble, you solve problems every day. You live it together. You live together and you rely on each other extensively. You rely on everyone to have your back at times of trouble. And then as you build that culture out, you're very clear, I think. You have to be very clear about what your culture needs to be. I think that's one thing we're not often very defining or clear about. Who we are and who we are not. Both have to be defined equally. We will play as a team, which means if you play as an individual, no matter how effective you are, it may not work here. We will be terrific at this, maybe not at that. If you're going to be terrific at customer service, you may not be as good at efficiency and cost. Make that choice.
And then work your systems around it.
And then everything moves in that direction, which means if you're saying you be the best at customer service, which means empower your people to be the best, firstly. But you can't say be the best at customer service, but check with your boss for everything, No. All of it has to work that way. You have to trust them. Define what the principles and the values are that you want, within which you'll work. If you say customer comes first, then customer comes first. Then your people have to have the freedom. Certainly at Genpact I would often talk about a customer coming first, and therefore we will do nothing that is to our benefit and against the customer. So if I can give a customer productivity, which means I can do the work they've given me for 5 people less, but that will reduce my revenues, I will do it.
You will do it.
I will not say, this will hit my revenue. I won't do it. I'm sure people did. I'm sure people protected their revenue turfs, etc. But the broad overriding theme was, you will get enough business from a customer. Don't worry about that. Just do the right thing. I think if you start defining, by the way, if you look at Amazon values, phenomenal. Phenomenal. The way he scripted it. Leadership is defined by how many leaders you create, not by your individual performance only. So if you aren't creating enough leaders yourself, which are measurable in terms of saying, yes, you've got 5 great people who could rise 3 times higher. It says that you're not hiring well, you're not training well, you're not mentoring well, you're not leading well, you're probably not delegating enough, you're probably distrustful. It tells you all of that in one short, sharp sentence.
True.
One of the things I'm proudest of at Genpact is you look at there's no BPO company in India which is not being run, which doesn't have Genpact people at the scene. You go to, I was applying for visas and I thought, let me look up VFS and 4 people from GE Capital in Genpact. Phenomenal leaders, great leaders. Build that along. Learn how to hire great people. It's a huge challenge. And your organization needs to learn how to hire great people. Because it shouldn't just be my judgment. Again, a lot of people nobody teaches that. Nobody teaches people how to interview to get to the right dimension. The fact is, you will compromise on hiring if you need someone in a hurry, knowing that it'll take you 2 years to get that person out if it's the wrong person. And in those 2 years, it's not about that person. It's about the damage they do to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, because everybody's watching what kind of talent is coming.
They're also causing havoc, right? They're not doing their own work properly.
Yeah.
So very often you're being kind to one person, chalo, give him another chance, her another chance. Hey, look at what they're doing to everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're running a good organization, they know where they stand, you know where they stand. Let them go. They'll be happier. Let them find their feet. Done. It's not an unkind cut. It's a kind cut.
It's so important because somebody who will come to your office for an assessment would have to go through many steps. If those steps are not right,
they're not right.
And if they don't understand the kind of people that you're looking,
that's right.
They're going to be probably rejecting the right guys and accepting the guys whom they think should meet you.
And it's when you're hiring that many people, they're not meeting me anyway.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that on the ground level?
How do you do that? And like before that, like what would you look when you meet people? Like, these are my top 3 assessment criterias or top 3 no's that
yes.
I'm not gonna budge from.
Yeah. It's very important to know yourself well. Mm-hmm. And therefore compensate for your own biases. That's one thing I've learned. I've become worse at hiring, not better over time.
More biases?
More biases. And that's showing through a lot. So I don't really trust myself anymore.
Whereas people would feel that the more experience you have, you probably select better.
I'm too biased by my own past. So I think you have to be very sure about these things and you have to find that discipline to know yourself and know where you get it wrong. 2, technical skills you already know. If somebody has come up to a certain level, middle level, etc., they know
how to do the job.
They know how to do the job. They have a good degree. They've come from a decent college. That's all on paper. So then what you're looking for is, I think, temperament. Very much. Hunger. Energy. Energy matters. If you don't have energy, I'm 72 years old, right? If I don't have energy, if you don't have energy, you stop. You don't ask the extra question. You don't go the extra mile. You don't ask work. You don't catch that flight. You're not on the call. You're not reading enough. You're not thinking about competitors enough. Energy matters. And it doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, where you are. Energy
matters.
Because...
And it's law of nature. I mean, top down. I mean, if you're not having energy pool, how will you dissipate it down to your team?
How will they feel it?
How will they feel?
How will they react? How will they respond? Because people respond to leadership a lot. People are, in India particularly.
Yes.
Much more than in other parts of the world.
Yes.
We respond to leadership a lot, which is what you're seeing today, even with the Prime Minister, being charismatic. Lots of people responding to that charisma. And you'll see it all the time in India with leaders. People are really are great followers, I would say, of these movements that happen. So they have to see that. Curiosity matters. I'm not as good as I should be, but curiosity matters. The desire to ask questions of people who are seemingly unimportant, people who are peripheral, people who you run into, different companies, different organizations, different age level. Again, I'll go back to a very, very good friend, Rajat, who I've just been traveling. We've just been on holiday together for 2 weeks now. So that's how well I know him, etc. And he'll talk to everyone. He'll talk to the waiter. He'll talk to the people. Where are you from? Why did you get here? How did you come? And in these countries, you have people from everywhere, right? There's Norwegians aren't working there. It's the Spanish. It's the Irish. It's someone else. How did you end up here? What happened? What drove you? What brought you, etc. It's just curiosity and absorption, and I don't do that well enough. I should improve dramatically at that. But curiosity matters also because the world is changing. So if you're not going to allow that curiosity to take over, you won't realize how it's changing. You'll be very capsuled in your own little world. So to me, those three things are
important.
Are very, very important. Longevity matters to me. Maybe I'm wrong on this because the new crowd certainly...
That may be a bias?
100%. Your questions are a little too sharp. It's very good, but it's very good. No, I really must say your question, it's phenomenal questions. Phenomenal points that you hit every time. Absolutely. Complete bias. I wrote one resume. I worked 30 years in GE. I think that's great. Half the people I meet now say, what an idiot you are. You could have done so many other things with your life and you stuck with one company. Bias. Happily. I do question, though, where that balance is, and it's worth questioning. So I think there are many things like that, which are extremely important questions we should answer. How will they fit into your company culture?
You've used this word culture a lot, and new companies, they struggle a lot to define the culture.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, having fun, they, making their teams have fun, they term it as culture. But culture is something way more powerful.
No,
it's very different. It's way more overarching than, having a party or having an offsite or having a casual culture or, some has a sir culture, first name. So, how can entrepreneurs who are watching this, what is the time that they should start thinking about culture? And if they don't see that happening, how do they bring that thing out? Is it the culture of the entrepreneur or is it the collective culture? So what persists?
What survives, what lasts.
Yes. And what makes
how do you
the
bring
impact?
The institution around it?
The institution around it.
Yeah. It's very critical, and you're absolutely right. There are two things people don't think about sufficiently. Risk-taking, they do. Young entrepreneurs today, I think they take more risk than we used to. But they don't think about strategy sufficiently as to what is a really good strategy, a defensible, competitive positioning that will survive 10 years.
They're looking 5, 10. They're not looking 20.
They're not even looking 5. They're looking 1, 2.
Now.
Aaj ho gaya. Chalo, yahan bech diya. And 2 will be, they're not, to your point, thinking about culture at all. They're not. And so, I have the same question. Many of them come up and say, but what is culture? What should I do with it? How do I deal with it? And so, another way maybe we shouldn't call it culture. And I think that's
interesting.
A conclusion I'm just reaching right now in my mind as we talk, that maybe culture is the wrong answer, is the wrong word definition. It's not culture. It's saying, look, how do you want to work as a company?
What's your way of work?
It's a way of work. How will you make decisions? Do you want it consensus? Do you want it
majority?
Do you want it मैं बताऊंगा?
Yeah, one person.
Do you want discussion? How quickly do you want decisions? If you want speed, then you can't have consensual meetings.
Yeah.
Hobe na. Right?
Absolutely.
Hobe na. If you want consensual meetings, then you won't have speed. Okay. If you want people to be doing independent things really brilliantly, then they won't necessarily work well with the team because they want to go off and do their own thing. And how do you want them to interact with the other? You have to think deeply about them, and we're not used to. We're very intuitive as a country. We're much more intuitive. I think that's where the family thing comes in. We all respond intuitively to each other.
Yeah. Or don't respond.
Yeah.
Keep mum about it, even if it's troubling.
Yeah. Or certainly learn to deal with it, which is not a bad thing, by the way. It's quite often not every problem needs a solution. I've always said that. Not everything that comes to you as a boss needs to be solved by you. Leave it. Time will solve it. Most of the time does solve it.
It does.
Yeah, don't poke into it. 2 people are having a scrap. to business leaders. Very tough. What's got tough? Next month. I don't have time this month. I'll talk to you next month. But then the problems disappear. They've solved it. Something else. So thinking these things through is important because it starts defining the company and defining how people will look at you and see how you're working. If they see you being closed, political, or biased in favor of one versus the other in meeting, they will choose that route. So thinking about this is very, very important. It actually it will drive success and failure.
It will.
Look, if you think about, let me give you one or two examples. In a bank or a financial services, what are you selling? Money.
Yeah.
Why does one branch do better than the other? At some point, entrepreneurs have to sit back and think about that and say, what makes it tick? Most people will say it's the person. It's a branch manager.
Correct.
If that's your answer, then you're in deep shit. Because that means...
The other one also you hired.
You hired the other one. And therefore, you are entirely dependent on that small group of people.
Yeah.
Whereas what you want is a machine. I mean, you can't build a GE or a Microsoft globally and be dependent on branch manager, for God's sake. It just won't work.
Right.
Won't work. It won't work. You need to accept that many of your people will be mediocre. Some will be brilliant. All will have different levels of performance. But the tools you give them and the way they work, etc., will drive performance. That's what will drive performance. In sales, for instance, it's been clear to me for a very long time, and it's why we did well at Genpact also in that area when I was there, was it's not the brightest salesperson that drives results.
Yeah.
It's the one most well prepared. There's a very bright salesman who says, I'm charismatic, I'll walk into the CEO, मैं तो बेच के आऊंगा. Because I hit the all button. Great. No, the other person says, I'm not that smart. I'm going to plot and plan. I'm going to study my clients. I'm going to draw up a list. I'm going to understand where they're coming from. I'm going to see the right clients at the right time. So my yield is better. They'll win. Hands down, 90% of the time. Understanding these things is very important. And as a CEO, an entrepreneur typically is driven by an idea.
Yeah, not by the process, more by the idea.
By the idea. Yeah. Right. Exactly right. Not by they think, and many entrepreneurs I talk to think that having to deal with these issues with people is just a bloody waste of time.
Yeah.
And I feel like telling them, this is your life, buddy.
Yeah.
This is your entire life. Get used to it, because you will spend 50% of your time on people issues, and they will whinge and whine and crib and moan and play politics and do this and do that, all of that. You want to get rid of all of that? You better have a defining culture which says, this is how we work, guys.
Yeah.
And there are things that are important. A lot of people, certainly in Genpact, would be paid very different amounts at the leadership level. Some were paid twice what the other person. All CXOs reporting to me. Again, my answer was, yeah. You came from that organization. We gave you what we thought was a very good salary. We're not a communist company. We will not equate everyone at a band. You do well, we'll take your salary up over time. In the meantime, we hired the other person from a different salary level. They're paid. At that time, when you hired the salary, when we hired you, you were happy with your salary.
Yeah.
The moment you heard about the other person earning more, you are unhappy about your salary. You said, help me understand this. And these are frank discussions I used to have with my people and say, tell me what. I said, all your life, someone will be paid more than you, and someone will be paid less than you.
Yeah.
Do you want to be unhappy?
Yeah.
Did we pay you well? Are we rewarding you well? But here you get a lot. वो मेरा बैच का है. वो देखो कितना पैसा है. Okay. वो मेरा बैच का है. He's making $1 billion. I said, and the other point I would make is, I'll agree to increase your salary as long as the day I can hire someone for less, I can reduce your salary.
Yeah.
That's a trade I'll do with you. Are you agreed
What
to that?
was their response?
Response was, "Acha, main ja raha hu."
Let me go back to my work.
Let me go back. Because I was very clear. I said, listen, fine. If that's the trade you want,
Yeah.
then if you want market rates, then every time I can hire someone at lower levels, then please allow me to reduce our salary accordingly. Because otherwise, larger point being, these are irrelevant conversations, which an entrepreneur or a startup owner often doesn't know what to do with.
People avoid these conversations. I see that.
Absolutely.
They don't want to do these conversations.
They're already, ab main kya karu? Or they start equating.
Yeah.
Everyone, very quickly.
That's the easy one, but the most problematic in the long term.
Because it takes your costs up, plus there's no reason you need to do it.
And there's no reason why the other person won't come back after 2 weeks, is that, we've got another guy with a higher salary now.
You'll be chasing that for the rest of your life. As opposed to saying, we've looked after you well, we've paid you well. Be happy. And certainly, not entertaining political discussions. Very important. These are things that entrepreneurs don't realize. If two people are having a political discussion, it's not your problem. Just tell them, if it gets in the way of work, you're both in trouble. You figure it out. You're adults.
Yeah.
Mujhe beech mein kyun dal rahe?
And when you call it a day at GE, Genpact, and move to new avenues. I mean, Clicks Capital has been doing exceptionally well. So how did you bring all of that learning into Clicks Capital and taking it to the new entrepreneur, especially on the social side? Because there the return on investments are very different.
Yes, very. I actually haven't been able to take it to Clicks, to be honest, because I'm not there every day. This is daily. So I can talk about it.
Yeah.
I've talked to them about it. I've sat with the management team. I've talked about how we should work.
I've done the mentoring with your...
Mentoring. But unless you do it every day, I wouldn't say that culture is replicated, actually. I think in many ways it isn't, and I wish it was. But, they have a CEO. He'll run it their way. Some of it is good. Some of it should be better, to be honest, at some parts of the culture. But the company is doing phenomenally well. So you also have to sit back and say, all right, leave them be. They're after post-COVID, they're doing fine. I can guide them. I can help them. I can't do it every day. I can't do it. This stuff has to happen every day in every interaction with every management team member. I used to be accused of not doing assessments really well, annual assessments, etc., etc. And partially correctly, but partially I would also ask people, is there anyone here who doesn't know how well or badly they're doing at any point in time?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a valid question to ask.
Think about any organization. Does somebody really not know? They may want to know what they could do better. Fair enough.
Right.
But generally, you're getting feedback all the time. All the time. And you're also seeing examples of culture playing out all the time. If you mean we'll want to create a cadre of leaders, when was the last time you took a 30-year-old and promoted them 5 times over everybody else because you thought they were phenomenal? If you haven't done that, you're not doing what you've said. So don't just put names, words on a list. Show them. Take somebody. Jack Welch took Mike Frazier, who was a colleague of mine in the corporate audit staff, at the age of 29. He loved a presentation he had made. He was very bright. He made him the head of GE Japan at 29.
At 29?
Show that. When you talk about risk-taking, George Osborne was a Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK at 35. Here we worry about, our first thing that goes on when we hire somebody is 20 years experience. 20 years? What for?
There'll be 3 generations in that.
3, correct. And think about how much you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Why? Why do we do this? So I think you've got to break these norms, and you've got to show that you're breaking these norms, and you've got to show that you don't care. And then a lot of this other pettiness and crap goes out the way. Get somebody who's really smart and young and move them up. They're phenomenal. I was in Davos wandering around and gone to attend a McKinsey party. I was sitting there. Mm-hmm. We were the only people there. There's an English guy and myself walking around. And we started chatting. He asked me what I did. I said, run Genpact. And we started this back office outsourcing stuff from the UK, just causing a loss of jobs, etc. He said, yeah, very bad, etc. And I asked him, what do you do? He said, I'm George Osborne. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And there's a 35-year-old kid walking around. No trappings, nothing. It's just the ability to take very bright people and say, here. And what it does to the organization, it galvanizes the organization. It galvanizes, for every one person you do that, it galvanizes 500 others.
Absolutely.
To say, look, I could do this. It changes the dynamics of the organization. It changes the very fat, cliquish, happy culture. Ki hum to pahunch gaye hain. We're happy and we cannot be challenged. Oh no. Yes, you can. How about this person? Yeah. So I'm talking very anecdotally and not structurally. So forgive me for that.
No, I think there's a lot to be extracted from the anecdotes, because I think it sort of plays in front of your eyes and you can actually see and relate. If it was my movie, then this is what I need to take from it.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I think if you think about what are the values you would write down on a piece of paper, and then think below that as to how you will make them happen, that helps a lot. Don't leave them as a broad, we will produce great leaders. Okay. How many did you produce? Well, you can't measure it. No? Why?
So why did you put it as well?
Why? You can't. We will be very good at teamwork. Okay, well, then where has teamwork resulted in some fabulous result? We will be operating, Genpact, we were probably the best at managing business processes. Six Sigma, Lean, we're terrific. So we will be operational, we will represent operational excellence. So how are you going to do it? Well, 20,000 people trained in Lean, 12,000 green belts, 500 master black belts, etc., etc. Permeates. You have to define it. And once you start defining it, it starts playing through. And for young entrepreneurs, I would say that they have to sit together as a team and saying, what do we really want to be good at? What do we think our clients need, our customers' needs are? If we want to be the best at delivering something on time to a client, then everything must focus on that, and people must have the power to say that if something is getting delayed, they will accelerate it at the ground level, because you're not going to do it. So you've got to start thinking through these things very intuitively and really well. If you want to ask people say, we want to be innovative. Okay, that's very admirable virtue. After you've had the first idea, then what happens? How are you promoting it? How are you funding it? How are you picking people
putting it to work?
How are you putting it to work? How are you making sure it gets surfaced? How are you making sure you get the idea? What is all the stuff that you're doing around it? Can't just be innovative and bounce around and, So I think there's a lot more depth that you have to put into this, and that is revealing.
So Genpact has brought in a lot of excellence around process, business process, and then there was a lot of pride, and it was a time where it was needed, and it did that job. And then people moved on to the knowledge process, and now we are talking about the global capability centers in India, where it's not just the process, it's not the knowledge creation, it is actually the innovation and managing the capability altogether in India. So the outsourcing has seen a journey, a full spectrum. So where is it going from here, and where are the opportunities for entrepreneurs? What role technologies like AI or some of the other technologies have to play as we go forward? So is there a trend? Do you see a trend line going somewhere, or we are yet to discover?
No, there's a very clear trend.
Okay.
Very clear trend. Not all of it good for what the IT BPO industry has done. So the knowledge stuff started a long time ago, actually. It's come to the fore perhaps more now, but we started our analytics business in 1998, 99.
Wow, back then.
Right. Just pretty much at the start of Genpact. Or GE started it, and then we inherited it from them. So we have a very large analytics business, which has been around for years, and it was the jewel in our crown in many ways. And it was very effective, employing the most talented people. I do think that the rise of the GCC in some way is because perhaps the industry itself wasn't innovative enough. We remain too much of order takers rather than
order creators.
Order creators and coming out with services and products that are new. And so companies are saying, we'll take the talent that India represents and use it for ourselves, because perhaps we will be better at creating that. Now, maybe that has to happen in a global capability center, which is effectively a captive. These are, give them GCCs a nice name, they're basically captives. But yes, the caliber of work being done within the company for that is exceptional. Some of that work will never be outsourced to a third party, so I fairly understand that. But there's a lot of other stuff which could have been, where typically a third party could have done that work very effectively, but we didn't. I don't think we made that leap.
We didn't.
Certainly that's an indictment of Genpact, and of all the companies, as to, are we better at what we do than the clients? Or are we just taking what they used to do and doing it
at cheaper cost?
Somewhat better.
Yeah, somewhat better.
But have we come out with a new system to run back offices? Have we come out with a new payroll platform? Have we come out with a new accounts payable platform, supply chain platform? I mean, we have so much knowledge. Did we assimilate that and bring it together in a way that allowed us to make a brand new product like, I don't know, Workday, which is a HR platform built in the US, phenomenally successful, like Salesforce.com. We should have built that. So I think the trend has happened. It will change. GCCs are being built right now by many companies which are highly profitable. They see it as essential. It will change. We're sitting at a very interesting point. Demographics for India versus the rest of the world are going to play out very intensely now over the next 10, 15 years.
And why do you say that?
Because there's a rapid labor shortage happening increasingly across the world in certain industries. So if you look at nursing, healthcare, trucks, plumbing, electrician, AI engineers, IT engineers, etc. The demographic dividend is changing. Demand for these services is growing. And the only country with people that can serve them is here.
Sure.
So I don't think there's been a better time for India if we grab it. I don't know if we know how to grab it. I love the Indian entrepreneur. I think they're bold, they're getting better, they're getting faster. But this is a time to build many new industries around talent export, services export, people, skills, all of them, because the world needs them. Japan needs I think it's got an open mandate for, probably get this number wrong, but I think it's got an open mandate for 30 to 50,000 healthcare workers.
Wow.
It needs them. America needs them. England needs them. England doesn't have, in England, the National Health Service, if you want an appointment for a knee operation, it's 9 months.
Wow.
Right? We're the only ones with the talent pool. Can we train them? Can we deploy them? Can we build products?
So skilling is something that you feel is going to ride really high. And it's just not the IT skilling. It's just not the routine desk skilling. It's the real hardcore skilling the ground.
Hardcore skilling on the ground.
Export quality, yes. If I may use that
Very
word.
Good. I think it's a great point. I'm going to use that word. Export quality. I think that's damn good. Why not? We use it on
every other thing that we said.
Yeah. We should use it for our people. And I think we have an opportunity. We're sitting in a position where countries are going to have to open up. They have no choice.
They have no choice.
They don't have. They're running short. If you go to the airports, you're beginning to see.
Yeah, I've seen. There are hardly any people there. Thanks to whatever investments they've done in automation, they're surviving. But there are human interventions that are required.
And they fall apart at the moment something breaks. Yes. It all falls apart.
Yeah,
you'll see that.
They don't know what to do because they're so used to process.
Any divergence, it's like
a logjam.
Yeah. Going crazy. So I think there are, if you think about, again, going back to Norway, all the people working there that we went to see the Northern Lights also in February. All the people. The bus is run by the guide was from Taiwan, a girl from Taiwan.
In Norway?
In Norway.
Talking about Norway?
Yeah. Talking to us about the Northern Lights. Where do you come from? Taiwan. Excellent. The bus driver is Irish.
Oh.
Somebody else has come from somewhere else. Just now we were, I was in Copenhagen. The waitress was serving us, very sweet, lovely. Where do you come from? Peru.
Wow.
Peru? Copenhagen? Makes sense. Right. So these migrational corridors are going to start growing. Supply chains are going to grow. And there'll be government resistance. There'll be migratory issues. There'll be all kinds of issues. But these things are all hitting at a time when the countries and economics are going to demand it. I just hope India were sharp enough. One of the things all of us had to do at the IT industry is we had to train our own people.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see, I hope you'll see, a rapid rise in how people are trained. Because it's not going to happen. The system isn't going to change fast enough.
It's going to be a privatized effort.
Yes, it'll have to be. I hope the government will also respond. But I think initially...
When it reaches a certain scale, probably.
Yes. I think when you start thinking about life that way, India has to grow at 10 to 12% a year. I'm the chairperson of an organization called ICREER, the think tank.
Yes.
Which is one of the most challenging and enjoyable things I do in my life. And I love it because of the caliber of the researchers that we have in the organization. It's a 100-people organization, but many of the best economists of India have come through it. Deepak Mishra is our director, runs it. Phenomenal guy. But the depth of talent that you get there and the way they think about issues on agriculture, digital economy, etc., starts making you think about India's position for the future.
Right.
We need to grow at 10 to 12%, not 8, 7.
Not 8, 7. Yeah. If we have to be where we have to
be.
be.
No country in the world has been able to grow and develop without reforming its education system substantively.
Because that is what is providing the workhorse, the powerhouse for any and every industry.
And it applies every day to things that we do. It applies to productivity every day. It applies to export. What was the word you used?
Export quality.
Export quality. It applies to how you drive. It applies to how your electrical wires are conducted. I must congratulate you. You're phenomenal here, because otherwise, if you go to a normal studio, there are wires everywhere, and then people are surprised that somebody, falls and breaks their neck. Wow, how did that happen? It's plug points are badly placed, joints are badly made, transformers are badly connected. So it's a rolling factor. So something or the other is happening all the time, which starts breaking down. So you spend a lot of your time focused on these issues if you don't have people of high quality, or not high. People are high quality if you don't have people of high quality who are well trained in the disciplines of how do you do things right, how do you not take shortcuts, how do you make sure everything is done properly, how do you follow that discipline, etc., etc. The quality impact of that is substantive. But I think if we can train people up, it'll make a huge difference culturally and behaviorally, which is absolutely critical.
So, on the business side, there's a lot, that you've shared, but there is a social and philanthropic side of you that I'm of the fortune to be aware of that and be part of one of the initiatives at Plaksha. But I believe there are certain areas that you so dearly believe in and pursue relentlessly outside of your work. So where is that, motivation coming from? And I mean, entrepreneurs get into business, they do big things, they achieve, they make money, and somehow there's always a vacuum,
buzz.
And, there is something that is missing, and somehow here comes the contribution to society, and that somewhere really ticks that box that you're doing something far more meaningful than building a bank balance somewhere. So how did that journey start for you? And
I should ask you as to how you started in Plaksha.
No, I mean, we both were actually similar
proud
time.
To be there.
We're absolutely proud to be part of Plaksha and the effort that they're doing.
Yeah.
But outside of Plaksha also, you're supporting a lot of causes, and I know, especially around women empowerment, is an area that you so dearly want changes to happen. Is there a motivation? Is there something that you're looking forward to achieve? How is it happening? How is it going? And something that the entrepreneur should always keep in mind that, at the end of the day, you're doing business, and that business is for society. And if that society doesn't feel happy, safe, secure, and motivated, what good is that business?
What is it for? I should have prepared better for this interview with you.
Trust me, it's not an interview. It's just
no, I know
a conversation.
It's been phenomenal. Thank you, really. Quite marvelous. One of the best I'll ever do, but I've ever done with someone of your capability and insights. Fantastic. There's a seminal moment which I always talk about, which is very funny. We took Genpact public in New York Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Standing there, घंटी बजाई, सब कुछ किया, पहुंच गए. And a reporter asked me, he said, Mr. Bhasin, now you've made a lot of money, because I had, or the value had gone up. Yeah. The investor had bought us at $600 million, and we went public at $3 billion 2 years later.
Wow.
Right? So
amazing.
And I had options, etc. And he asked me, he said, now what will you do? And I said, I was completely nonplussed. I had no answer. He said, what will you do with all this money? I said, the best I came up with, I said, I'll buy a new music system. Right?
Yeah.
And that point, I realized that money has no value for me. Or has value, I shouldn't say that no value, that would be completely wrong. Has limited value, firstly.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think part of what we talked about earlier, how we are brought up, comes from that. Middle class families, not a lot of money, no desire to show it off, some interest in living well for sure, but not a great extravaganza or need to run around. I mean, for years at Genpact, I drove a Honda City car, which had a bang on the side because I got it from one of the other employees when I didn't need one. I drove it for 7-8 years. Because, cars don't do anything for me. I mein, they've never done anything.
They're point A to point B.
Haji?
They're point A to point B for you.
Point A to point B, yeah. Kya badi itni badi gaadi mein baitho, I had a badi gaadi sitting at home. It didn't come out of the garage. I think it did 12,000 miles in 10 years or something like that.
Wow.
So then one, you realize that. Then two, I think when we employed so many people at Genpact and saw the difference we made to their lives, that's really what changed my thinking a lot. Because I realized that as I came through and we were hiring these people, the impact it had on their entire family was amazing. We had people whose parents were cooks and domestic staff. We had people from middle class homes. We had girls from Bihar, Chhattisgarh, every part of India coming to live in Gurgaon, finding a life for themselves. Some were bored, some were erratic, some were adventurous, some were conservative. But the difference we made to their lives was phenomenal. I tried to build something called the Skills Academy, which was a dismal failure because our attempt at that time was to skill people up in a way that was phenomenal. In scale, etc. None of it worked. Because we got sucked into these government programs, which, by the way, are a disaster, in my view. The skills development programs that they have just are ineffective, and I wish they would change them around. But that taught me how little I knew of India. It taught me I knew nothing. Bharat, India. And I said, life is a series of accidents. I should do my interview of you one day. I'll ask you the same questions. How did you get here? Josh ka matlab kya hota hai? Kahan se aaya? Etc. But I think the point is that life is a series of accidents. I knew Ishra Ahluwalia. She asked me to come join the ICRIA board. She passed away. I was made chairman of the board. We have a conference called Neemrana every year, which we go to. We're doing it again in December. Small, closed-door conference, 50 people. That's it. But, Chidambaram used to come, Jaitley used to come. So very small 2-3 day event, fabulous event. I met Abhijit Banerjee there.
Wow.
The Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah.
And who's since become a very, very dear friend. Right? I read his book called Poor Economics. I always tell everybody, if you want to understand poverty, the nature of poverty, read that one book. It changed my life. Well, not my life, my way of thinking. And it taught me the nature of poverty and the issues that these people deal with and how they need to behave. And so it started dawning on me on how much I have to do, why I was wrong to do Skills Academy, why I worked at HelpAge for 9 years, and that was phenomenal because it was very targeted. So now what we want to try and address, and we're doing a massive survey with JPAL right now, Abhijit's organization. The biggest elephant in India, in the room, that nobody is addressing is sexual harassment. You're seeing all the news today. It's rampant. It's happening all the time. It's one of the things, by the way, I was very proud at Genpact. Huh?
Yeah.
Everybody, we were known for it. We were ferocious. I mean, I had some powerful women leading our ombudsperson network. My God, not even a Gunda in Haryana could stand up to say. And these people, and these are phenomenal women who would take on anybody.
Wow.
So everybody in the organization knew, bahar jo karna hai, kar lijiye. And we had a lot of women. We had 50% women, right?
Yeah.
And they're all traveling together, they're coming back together, they're living in different places, all kinds of stuff. But it is the biggest elephant in the room. So that's, I think I'm now at a point where I've signed up with Living by Promise, etc., to give out at least 50%, probably more of all the wealth I have. But that is the one thing I want to focus on.
Okay.
Is I'll never solve it in my lifetime. But amazingly, there's no one organization trying to solve for this.
Really? There's no one who's out there supporting and promoting and...
Small ways.
Very small. But not in a structured...
There's no pratham. There's no seva. There's no huge major effort around it. And I think that has to start driving you when we live in a country. I can understand that in America it doesn't happen because you don't see poverty, you don't see these issues. In India, it's daily, it's in your face, it's in the newspaper. How can any of us... As an Indian man, I get asked many times, why are Indian men so obnoxious? I mean, right? I'm asked this all the time. If I'm talking to friends in the US, they're saying, listen, these newspaper reports we read are horrific.
Like, what's happening there?
What's wrong with the country?
Yeah.
We have to solve it. So that's something I hope over the next 10, 15. That's all I want to do. I'm going to boil it down to saying, all right, let me work on this. I still have Plaksha hostel construction. That
project.
I'm also in charge of for some reason.
Yeah.
And landscaping in there, which I love.
It's come out really beautiful.
It's
when you go to the campus, it's
come out.
It's a different world out there. So I'm gonna ask you this final question around what's your vision of entrepreneurship for India? What kind of leadership styles Indian entrepreneurs need? And I know that the education system is trying to catch up with the changing times and the skills that the children need. But as they say that, you don't wait for it, you create it.
Yes.
And so what kind of mindset you would want to leave people with, as your comment to the entrepreneurs who are thinking and they're feeling in their hearts that, there is a fear of failure. I'm not trained for it. Am I the only one who can do it?
Yes.
So how can they make it bigger than, larger than their lives?
Yeah, I firstly, leadership there's no cookie cutter for it. There's no, this works and this doesn't work. Yeah, if you're obnoxious to all your people, they will leave you, yes. But
that's also a leadership style, but that's that has its own outcome.
Right. And so as a leader, I often tell people to follow your own style, follow what you're good at. If you're good at managing people, do that. Hire somebody else for other things. If you're good at building products, and hire someone to manage people. Find that balance first. But I would say India is in a unique position There is almost no better market in the world. And it doesn't matter what you look at. Financial services, education, healthcare, water, energy, logistic, whatever it may be.
Name it.
Because we have so many gaps, we have so many opportunities.
True.
Every gap
That's the opportunity.
is an opportunity. And the world needs us now even more, and the world is beginning to recognize us. It's very early days, and I'm making this, I'm sticking my neck out here, which will be chopped off by everybody else, which is the world. This is a new thing happening in the world now. I'm beginning to hear it, and I'm just trying to recognize it a bit earlier than most, a bit like the BPO industry we created.
Okay.
To say there's a new need happening, which the world is beginning to recognize that they will not be able to fulfill their own needs, and they're going to have to find other ways to do it. And we're probably the only country left in the world where they can come and do it. Stable government, won't get into the politics of it, but we're a stable democracy. Lots of people, lots of talent, great people. If we can't shape that to build global companies, then we'll
miss the bus.
Right. And my last one would be that we must recognize how gifted we are in terms of most of us. We represent like 1% of the world's of India's population sitting here. Students at Plaksha, all the people here, would represent 1, maybe 2%. That's it. If you look at all the demographics. So if we won't do it, who the hell will? And if we don't fight to change and take the risks that are necessary, then who the hell will?
True.
And we must do. And we will always find something to fall back on. The opportunities out there are so many that earlier days, certainly my age, not your age, my age, you had no jobs. You took the job you got. The first job you got, you grabbed it.
And you just keep holding it.
And you said, and you had no choice. I mean, my God, you were grateful for that one job that you got. It didn't matter what it was, you took it. And you said, Bhagwan ki kripa. You don't have to do that today. You fail, you'll fall back. Something else will take over. So I hope we take the risks. And I hope we are far more impatient about the state of affairs in India and our future. Because we need to accelerate much more than we've done today. For what it's worth. And solve for women's harassment, empowerment issues in our country. It's a phenomenal tragedy and a waste of talent.
Do you think that can start at home? Like for the boys, the mother, the father must tell the boy?
100%. That's exactly what it has to start. And that's kind of where we'll also focus.
Okay.
How do we get into the home? Getting into the home is very hard because people don't talk about it. People won't reveal it. Women won't talk about it. Sons won't talk about it. Absolutely. They have to start. And a lot of people say we have to educate the sons. My theory on it is a little different. Yes, absolutely, you have to educate the sons, but you also have to educate the mothers who are bringing up the sons.
Yeah.
To be able to stand up for themselves because they can't. And that's what starts driving inopportune behavior because they themselves are powerless very often.
Yeah.
So imagine empowering mothers to take on a bigger role.
True.
That itself would be a huge change.
So on that note, Pramod, thank you so much for your time. One of the most inspiring and intriguing discussions I've ever had. Thank you so much.
You've been very kind. Your questions are quite brilliant. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Bye.